First things first, as I am every day, Jenna Wolfe, that's the Hall of Famer Chris Carter, and that's Nick Wright. It is Wednesday. We are in the middle of what is going to be our second gigantic storm in New York City in the last 5 days.
I don't buy it.
You're a skeptic? You're a weather skeptic?
It's not supposed to get below 33 degrees.
Why don't you ask
some major snowstorm?
Ask the weather guy.
Let me ask our Doppler. Yep.
Over the next 12 hours, people, there's only one window where it's 90% chance of precipitation, and that being snow.
Okay.
So there's going to be a lot of snow.
Okay.
But is it going to stay on the ground? Because if it doesn't stay on the ground, what does it matter? It just falls from the sky and goes away.
There's going to be snow, Nick, right?
All right.
It's going to be messy in New York City today, and then perhaps it'll warm up and everything will be good again.
Yes. Good opportunity to watch some more sports.
Exactly.
Absolutely right.
Stay in, shack up with me, and we'll do it.
Okay.
And then in the afternoon. Hey, say it was late January and you decided to take a break from following the NBA. And then today you decided to check back in. Let me update you. Rockets still haven't lost a game. Nothing's changed. Last night they won their 16th straight game, beating Oklahoma City. Chris Paul had 25 points. James Harden with 23. So the Houston Rockets have now tied the Celtics for the longest win streak of the season. Let's kick the conversation off with you, Chris Carter. What do you think's made the Rockets so successful during this current win streak?
I think their ability, and you have to give their coach a lot of credit and their front office, because the players that they've acquired, it's easy to talk about Chris Paul and how phenomenal him, Capella, and Harden are together. But the other pieces that they have, making Trevor Ariza feel comfortable that he can be a big-time scorer, he's a big-time defender, but the role that he plays. P.J. Tucker, acquiring him. And you saw in last night's game where they went to a small lineup, put P.J. Tucker at the 5, and he was involved in the pick and roll. So you're talking about mismatch. You're talking about nightmare. So their ability to be able to be different in different quarters and different nights. That's how you're able to win 16 games late into the season. And this is more significant than the Celtics streak. 16 games is 16 games, but doing it at the beginning of the season, it is a lot easier. Teams don't understand. Training camp being shortened. Now you're talking about the heart where every night teams are fired up for the best team in the NBA. So what they're doing is very, very significant, and the ways that they're doing it, in the different ways, so which I believe it creates this confidence as you get into the playoffs. Why? Because you get in the playoffs, teams start taking away your number one option, your number two option. They know your sets. They know your plays. They know your out-of-bounds plays. So their ability to be different from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, and their ability to shoot free throws to close out games, I believe is going to be critical in deciding who's going to be the NBA champion in 2018.
I want to expand on something Chris said in just a moment. But first, how are they able to do this? Well, I believe it's in large part because they're the best team in basketball. But even if you don't believe they're the best team in basketball, it is hard to argue against them being the most complete team in basketball. And that, I think, is something Chris alluded to. What do you want in 2018 NBA? What do you want? What do you have to have? First thing, shooters. The Rockets have as many of them as any team in the league outside of Golden State. What's the second thing you've got to have? Elite rim protection. Enter Clint Capella, a great draft pick by Daryl Morey a few years ago out of Switzerland. All right, what's the next thing you need? Some scoring off your bench. Enter Eric Gordon, a savvy free agent pickup from a couple years ago. What's the fourth thing you need? Some true perimeter defense. Enter Trevor Ariza, an acquisition from a few years ago. Luke Richard-Mbah-a-Moute, an acquisition from this summer. If we want to then really nitpick, what's one more thing you'd like? How about just some toughness? How about what the Warriors said Zaza adds to them? But some real toughness. Enter Nene Hilario. Enter P.J. Tucker. Like, what do you want in modern NBA basketball that the Rockets don't have? Nothing. They have the league MVP. They have a future Hall of Famer, first ballot, no doubt guy as their second best player. That gives them elite passing, 48 minutes a game, and then every other box is checked. So when you add to that one thing that has been underrated for the Rockets this year, which is health, you get a team that's going to win 65-plus games and right now look like the best team in the NBA.
And on top of all that, which you alluded to, they're not just winning one way. They can win all different ways. And we talked about this earlier in the week. They can win with a fast pace. They can win with a slow pace. They can win the half court. They can win however they need to match up with another team. And that ability, tell me if I'm wrong, that ability to be able to adapt to whatever style another team is playing is what puts them at an advantage.
It really helps them. Their ability to be able to knock down shots, because if you have one or two guys that are cold And that's what you worry about with Golden State. Like, they have Steph, they have Clay, they have KD. But after that, like, there's not a whole bunch of knockdown shooters that – so I could understand why Nick and other people are starting to get on Houston as far as the best team because of the variance of way they can do things, their overall depth, the way the team is built. And, Nick, you mentioned – 4 or 5 components that are critical. The only thing they don't have is postseason success together.
Experience.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that collectively that they don't have.
What about with regards to how they would match up over the course of a 7-game series? Because the game changes a little bit at that point, and then you say specifically against Golden State.
Listen, they, in my eyes, should be drastic favorites over every team in the West other than Golden State. Okay, so if they are to lose in the postseason before they play Golden State, then all of the what I think right now are somewhat unfair criticisms about Harden's resume,
they'd be
CP3,
justified.
exactly right. If this team loses in the first or second round, even if it's a tough matchup, even if you draw Oklahoma City in the first round or Minnesota in the second round or even San Antonio with Kawhi back in the second round, you should beat them. So I think they are just you watched them last night, and they just send wave after wave of scoring at you. And now in this winning streak, they're adding forget top 10, a top 5 defense, and they seem like a truly great team. How do you beat Golden State then? Listen, that's really hard. And with the Durant version, we haven't seen anyone have any type of postseason success against them. Why do I think the Rockets have as good of a shot as any team in the last 2 years? Because, first of all, I don't know that Golden State will have the best player on the court. I think that's a coin flip between Harden and KD or Harden and Steph. And second of all, the second unit. One thing the Warriors and Steve Kerr have never done, and maybe it's because their guys aren't equipped to it, Steph doesn't play 44 minutes a game in the playoffs the way LeBron does, the way we see Russ do in the postseason, no matter who his coach is. Steph's going to play 36 minutes a game, 37 minutes a game. KD's going to play around the same. They are going to have to get big minutes from their bench unit. The Rockets' bench unit is extraordinary right now, especially with essentially the new Jamal Crawford, the new reigning 6th man every year, Eric Gordon, coming off the bench for him.
I mean, very exciting things for Houston, but it's yet to be seen in a series. When things slow down, when you get where everyone starts to understand what you're doing and the pressure of it, how do they respond collectively, and can they stay injury-free? Those are the things I believe determine who gets there in the West.
You said something early on about P.J. Tucker at the 5. Before the show, you talked about something you saw them doing in the pick and roll that I don't know if a lot of people noticed. That I saw it happen, but it didn't pique my interest the way it piqued yours. What did you see last night that intrigued you from the way they're using P.J. Tucker when Clint Capella's out of the game and Tucker's in there as the 5?
And it really, because they went to Haka Capella. They intentionally fouling him to shoot free throws. He's not a good free throw. So what does the coach do? He brings in P.J. Tucker as the 5. He puts him in the pick and roll. So which in turn, they just wait between him and Chris Paul, between Harden and Chris Paul, who they want to get in the matchup. So last night what they did was put P.J. Tucker in the pick and roll and eventually got Melo matched up on Harden where they could isolate on him. But in the pick and roll, he didn't do the traditional things as pick and pop through the three-point line because he is a three-point shooter. He got the ball at the elbow and was able to orchestrate more offense from that. So something that they hadn't done with their previous 5. And this is something as you start getting into playoff series, you start going offense, defense. I believe P.J. Tucker plays a bigger role as we start to get into these series.
What they were doing with P.J. Tucker, it was a poor man's Draymond Green. Not as good of a defender, but exactly what you're describing, where you can do the pick and roll there, have him out at the elbow or the wing, and then if you kick it to him, he can orchestrate somewhat. Again, Draymond's great at that, the best in the league at that role, but they are, you saw visions of that with how they use P.J. Tucker.
New topic now, back to basketball. The Oklahoma City Thunder, on paper, they're fantastic. Westbrook, Paul George, Melo, great lineup, great energy, great winning attitude. On the court, good lineup, decent energy, not as much winning as we thought. They lost to the Rockets last night, 7-9 in their last 16 games. If the playoffs started today, they would have to face Houston as the 7th seed. CC, why have the Thunder been such a, well, I'd call them a disappointment this season?
Well, it's really hard to figure out. Now, could they put all this together? I don't think they have them. When you're in the West, they have a good team, and they have Melo. They got him. Paul George, great player. Westbrook, great player. They still don't have the talent of the other teams in the West. Also, Billy Donovan, the coach. How good of a coach is he? You know, I've seen Russ lead this team. I've seen them play at a certain level led by the players. But to me, I question how good is he ultimately? Can he take them to that next level as a coach? I believe that's in question. And from a talent standpoint, they don't have enough shooters around. I mean, Melo is a good shooter, standstill, spot-up shooter, but they don't have enough shooters around Russ. I believe Adams became somewhat of a star this year. So their big three, to me, has been Adams, Paul George, and Russ. And right now, Carmelo, he's a complimentary player who is a liability from a defensive standpoint. So when you try to put Melo at the 4, you know you're going to have problems because defensively, he can't guard the 4s. So as a team, they've exceeded my expectations as far as one of the top 10 teams defensively in the league. But offensively, do they have enough shooters? I think that and the coaching are things I would bring into question.
You said at the beginning they don't have as much talent as some of the teams in the West. They don't have as much talent as Golden State or Houston, but they have more talent than all the other teams ahead of them. They have more talent than Portland. They have more talent than New Orleans. They have more talent than San Antonio, certainly when Kawhi hasn't played all year. They have more, at least equal talent to Minnesota, is spent more once you realize Jimmy Butler's out right now. Like, this is wildly disappointing for me. I'm a Russ guy. I'm a Paul George guy. Like Melo, because I'm a Syracuse guy, I like him as well, but I knew where he was in his career. But you have Russ, the reigning MVP, one of the 8 best players in basketball. You have Paul George, one of the 12 best players in basketball. You should not be fighting for a playoff spot. You should be fighting for seeding. And I understand that Andre Roberson went down and their defense has fallen apart without him. This was a team that had a top 4 defense with Andre Roberson, and now all of a sudden is a middle of the pack to bottom 3rd defense without him. You can't have one guy that's not, unless he's a rim protecting center, that has that big of an impact on whether or not your team can compete. You cannot be a team that right now is in the loss column, tied for 9th in the Western Conference. You just can't be when you have this level of talent.
The funny thing about it is, I'm looking at their record. They're 37-29. Mm-hmm. Guess what Cleveland is? Yeah. 37-26.
Yeah, but it's CC.
I'm just saying, like if we're disappointed in OKC, Cleveland's right there in the same neighborhood.
But OKC has had, for their top 4 players, health all year long. They have had, what? Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying that when you look at things, like I didn't think OKC was a championship team. So where do you think they are? They're probably going to be 4th or 5th in the Western Conference. How many games are they off of that? Like, they're just a few games off of that. Like, we know Portland's played outstanding. We didn't see that coming. New Orleans, we didn't see that coming. But when you look at their record, they're 37-29. Cleveland is 37-26.
Okay, I mean, we can talk about Cleveland, but as far as OKC goes, they are on track to win the same number of games as last year. That is a wild disappointment when Steven Adams has got better, when they've had as good a health as any team in basketball.
As the most disappointing team, I don't think they're. I think the Knicks are more disappointing. Like, I had higher expectations for the Knicks, and their star is hurt. So there's other teams I believe have had disappointing seasons. I don't believe OKC should be the focal point. Yes, we should be conversating about them, but there's other teams that have been disappointing just as well.
Nick, when we first started, when the season first started, there were 2 teams that we worried about with chemistry issues. It was Houston with Harden and Chris Paul, and it was OKC with Melo, George, and Russ. One team took off, which we didn't think. Those are 2 guys that want the ball, and they took off, and they've been great. The other team, whether you think they're disappointed or not, just haven't. What do you think the difference is?
Well, listen, I know a lot of people.
Is it a Billy Donovan thing?
I think part of it's coaching. A lot of people are going to blame Russ, and at this point, I understand some of that Harden does seem easier to play with than Russ seems to play with. But Russ is going to play his game no matter what, to a degree, it would appear. The guys around him, it's weird.
But is that a problem? Eventually, don't you think you should change and evolve?
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So that is a problem.
Yes, I'm not denying that. I don't understand what the disagreement here is.
Well, because they got Russ more talent.
Uh-huh.
All right. Now, Russ his game definitely didn't improve. And how good is Russ going to make other players? Because he's played with some great players. So I believe that will be part of the question. With the coaching, with Russ ultimately as a superstar, how good can you be there with Russ? And I believe that's a question that Paul George is asking himself right now.
Which is why this team is so disappointing. Going into this year, I mean, you can say now that nobody thought they could compete in the West. That to me, that's not historically accurate. On this show and on every show, the discussion was, if the Warriors don't win the West, who can? And people said Houston and OKC. Early in the year, when OKC played really well.
I only vouch for my own opinion.
But see, I know what you're
for other opinions.
And I know that when
I did not think OKC was a championship caliber team. We'll go back and pull the tape.
When they had that 22-8 stretch, the middle 30 games of the year, when it looked like they had gotten it right, the discussion on this show was that they could be a problem for any of the top teams in the West.
They still could be a problem.
Okay, well, that's where we disagree.
They could still be a problem.
I do not think that. I think right now this team is, for reasons I can't figure out, this team, we've had 60-some games for them to get it right. They haven't gotten it right. And you mentioned Paul George. We thought Paul George, it was, okay, they make the Western Conference Finals, they have a good playoff run, you would have reason to stay.
Right.
I don't see if you're the 7 or the 8 seed, you don't have a reason to stay.
These guys get to 50 games this year?
50 wins? No. I don't think so. I think they win high 40s like they did last year, which when you add Paul George you can't have the same record as you did last season. Not when you've had as good of help as they've had.
This past Saturday, Xavier clinched the regular season Big East title with a win over DePaul. It was their 12th win in 13 games, and it ended Villanova's 4-year run of winning the Big East. Don't tell Jay Wright, although I feel like he probably already knows. We're now joined by the head coach of Xavier, Chris Mack. Coach, thanks so much for joining us.
Good to see
Thanks
you.
for having me.
I'll tell Jay Wright. You don't even have to worry about things like that. You have bigger things on your plate right now. All right, let's talk about Saturday. First regular season Big East title in school history. Yeah. Tell me what that experience was like.
It was awesome. Obviously, we clinched a share the game before on Wednesday night against Providence, and so we had the opportunity to celebrate it. But, this was our 5th year in the league. Nobody had won a regular season title outside of Villanova, so obviously everybody knows how good they've been for so many years. So it was special, especially the fact that we have 3 seniors who've been with me for 4 years and have tried to climb that mountaintop, and to get there was awfully rewarding.
You mentioned the seniors. This is one of the reasons you guys are a likely 1 seed. One of the reasons you guys are a favorite to make the Final Four is in college basketball in 2018, a lot of youth, and you guys are very old for college basketball terms. How much has that changed the way you can coach this team when you have guys who are used to you, used to your system, and given the run last year, used to high-level success?
Yeah, first of all, we have a really good mix of young guys and veterans. But I think when you get to the point where your team is coaching the team, not that I don't have much of a role at all, but the seniors do a really good job. Tony Dungy calls it regenerative leadership, where your oldest players teach the younger players, and not necessarily just on the court, but the way you carry yourself, the way you travel, your practice habits. And when I have guys that are seniors that are looking at me in the eye in every huddle like they're freshmen, it's something that you want as a coach, and I'm very fortunate.
I've been very fortunate to have a lot of good coaches in my life, coaches that have influenced me, ones I've never played for. Even Coach Izzo, him and I text about once a week to stay in contact with each other. You mentioned Tony Dungy. Who are some of the other coaches that have had an influence on you and what you do at Xavier? Well,
I think you're a culmination of everybody that you either played for or worked with. Certainly my high school coach, the late Dick Burning, was a guy that, always kept it about family. And, when practice was over, and you had 3 turnovers, he wasn't up your tail, and you felt like you could be in a comfortable space with Coach. Skip Prosser was the first guy that brought me into college coaching, passed away in 2007. He was an assistant when I played at Xavier. And, Coach just had a great way about him. There wasn't a person that met Coach that would have a negative thing to say about him. And then, obviously, Sean Miller, who I was the assistant for 5 years at Xavier.
So, one more, real quick. You talk about those coaches. You talk about your senior guys. them getting their first title this year. How rewarding is it? Because other coaches, other publications, they have recognized you, one of the 10 finalists for the Naismith Coach of the Year honor. How does that feel, given all these coaches and the influence that they've had on you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't worry about those individual things. I want to do the best job for my guys. And, I think we have a great group, a group that's fun to coach. I want to be around guys that I like to be around. And that's really, really important to me. And, again, when you have guys that have been with you for 4 years, they've heard every locker room speech, they've heard every halftime talk, they've heard the same message over and over, but yet they stay the same coachable guys they were as freshmen. It's very, very unique. And, again, I'm really fortunate.
Coach, when I get a group of my girlfriends together and we go back to college once a year, it's like big-time fun. It's a blast. You get to actually coach at your alma mater, not with my girlfriends, because that would be awkward. What is that? What's that experience like? Just to continue to be around it.
It's great. I mean, if you've never been to Xavier, the thing that I would say describes it the best is just community or family. I tell people all the time in recruiting that when they come on campus and you're hosting a high school student with their parents, you tell them, hey, listen, this isn't for everybody. You're the person that you run into on a Monday, you're going to see them on Tuesday. It's not Big State U where you may not see somebody for a couple months. I mean, so you better treat the janitors right. You better treat the people that open up the loading dock so you can get in the gym and get shots up every single night. And so Xavier's a special place.
I want to talk about, obviously, the reason you're in New York City, the Big East tournament. It's very different for you guys going into the tournament, Big East tournament this year than last year. I think it's fair to say last year, had you lost your opening game, you might not end up in the NCAA tournament. You were even, despite winning.
Thanks for reminding me.
It's fun. No, it ended up being great. You guys made a run to the Elite Eight as a team.
That's Nick Wright. He makes plenty friends.
No. But if people don't remember Xavier last year, Xavier was an 11 seed going into the tournament.
I understand.
A great story getting to the Elite Eight. This year, it's very different. Obviously, you want to win this championship, but what you are fighting for now is, are you going to be a 1 seed? Are you going to be a 2 seed? Things like that, and the ability to cut down the nets in a few days at MSG. How different is the approach, if at all, going into the tournament now this year compared to what you were telling your team last year?
Yeah, I don't know if the approach is different, but I'm sure the mentality of our players is a little different. We came into the tournament last year with a huge sense of urgency. And, it's hard to foster that. It's hard to create that. But I do think that we have, again, keep going back to the word seniors, but guys that they want to go out the right way. They don't want to be a one-hit wonder here in the Big East tournament, arrive on a Wednesday and leave on a Thursday. So hopefully we're at our best. We're either going to play St. John's or Georgetown, two guys that are used to being in the Garden, and it should be a good one.
Well, Coach, we can't afford for you to go out Thursday because Nick and I have tickets for Friday and for Saturday. All right, so we can't afford that. Now, following up your first Big East, how important is the tournament to continue that momentum and to potentially get a higher seed in the big dance?
I think you want to be playing your best basketball at the end of the year when, let's face it, everybody remembers these games. The season matters the most. I mean, you probably wouldn't have me here if we weren't in Elite Eight the year before. So, that's one of the things that everybody points to is March. And so we do want to be playing our best basketball at the end of the year, and we get that started tomorrow at noon.
Talked about the strength of the conference a little bit. You guys have two of the best programs in the country right now. Not the biggest conference, so just a little bit about the competition that you have to face all season long and what a testament it is to where you guys are right now.
Well, a year ago we had 7 teams in the NCAA tournament, and I think sometimes they talk about the ACC and other other conferences,
12, right.
Getting 8, 9. Well, we only have 10 teams in our league, and when you're getting 70% of the teams in the NCAA tournament,
it's impressive.
It is impressive. Now, I think this year you're probably looking at 6 teams making the tournament.
Major disappointment.
Yeah. But the other thing I would tell you is I don't think you have to go that far. If you look at the team that finished in 9th place in our league, St. John's, they had a streak where they beat Villanova. They took us down to the wire. They beat Duke. In MSG. If you can take down Villanova and Duke in the same week, it says a lot about your talent level, and I think that's what our league looks like as a whole.
Do you think your players are, I know you got to focus on your own games, but you guys, in a tournament environment, you get to see the other teams playing because they're all in the same building. You think your players are rooting for Villanova on the other side of the bracket? You guys have had an amazing season, haven't been able to beat them yet. You could have a third shot at it, obviously, at 6:30 on Saturday. Do you think your players, I know you're going to say you don't care. Do you think your players are rooting for Villanova?
No, I think they're probably playing Xbox up in their room. You think,
like my staff.
You think I'm kidding?
Yeah. No. Talk about one of those players, Trevor Blewett. How impressed? Trayvon. Excuse me. I got a Trayvon in my life. Trayvon Grimes, wide receiver of Florida. So I get my Trayvons mixed up. Talk about his senior year and how impressed you were personally with his performance and how his game grew.
Well, I think, number one, Trayvon's always been a prolific scorer ever since he came to us as a freshman. But what's been really impressive in his senior year is the efficiency in which he's done it. You know, obviously, when you become the player that he is, everybody's circling you on the scouting report. You're getting everybody's best shot. You're getting everybody's best defender. And for him to have the type of year that he had, and really the consistency that he's had all the way through, says a lot about the character, his work ethic, not to mention, obviously, his ability level.
Would you consider this year the best team you guys have had?
I don't worry about those considerations.
Well, I'm worried about it.
Yeah, are you?
I'm very worried. I'm losing sleep over it. So,
you know, I just, as I said in the very beginning, I really enjoy coaching this team. I try not to compare teams. They have a personality that's very, very unique, and one I really enjoy coaching. I'm hopeful that I can continue coaching all the way through April.
Obviously, Coach, you took over for Sean Miller at Xavier. You obviously know him. What was your reaction to the ESPN story and then his very vehement denial from a few days ago refuting that story?
Well, you know, it's interesting because, you know, it's left a black mark, not only the episode with Sean, but some of the other things that have been going on in college basketball. And, you know, we could probably spend 5-10 minutes here. Obviously, I love Sean to death. He gave me a great opportunity at Xavier. I just wish that, you know, the facts would really come out and people could speak accurately on what is the truth. It seems like the story's changed over and over, and I don't see Sean coming out of his shoes like that if there wasn't some merit or some belief on his end that he isn't involved to the level that they've said.
When you said everything going around, how much harder has it made your job, the entire black cloud of this FBI probe around all of college basketball? I know you're not directly involved, but just everything, the recruiting and all the news around the NCAA these last, 9 months.
Well, it hasn't made my job any more difficult, but I think it has, cast a stain a little bit on college basketball. That, there are a lot of good people in this sport. There are a lot of good coaches that do it the right way, that teach their kids values that go well beyond the basketball court. So from that standpoint, it's disappointing. Again, I could go on and on. I think agents getting involved with kids when they're 8th graders, 9th graders is a huge part of the problem. And hopefully Mark Emmert and the people that are putting together a think group can make some changes that help all college basketball.
We are joined now by Villanova head coach and friend of the program, Jay Wright. What's up, Jay?
Great to see you.
How's it going?
Good to see you.
You too, Nick. I like how Chris started that in a defensive stance.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we weren't on
that
defense,
never happened.
Man, you got to
that never happened.
people.
But not when you played.
Oh.
Not for you.
Oh,
it was
yes,
this.
let's hear it.
You should have started like this. You should have started like this.
This morning when you cut your face, should have cut your neck.
I do want to let the audience know something. A little back of the napkin tabulations. I believe Jay Wright joins Super Bowl champion Lane Johnson as the only 3-time guests of this show.
Is that right?
I think you
it's a Philadelphia thing.
Yeah, you are now.
Yeah, it's a Philly thing.
Yeah, you
Jenna's got a little Philly in her.
I got a little Philly. Cece's got a little Philly in him.
I got nothing.
I appreciate that.
Nick can spell Philadelphia. So, hey, we had Coach. We had Chris Mack, the head coach of Xavier, on a couple minutes ago.
In the hallway.
He was just talking about what a pathetic program you guys have and how much better Xavier. No, we were talking about the strength of the Big East and how good this conference is to have 2 of the best teams in the country. Talk a little bit about what it's like playing in this conference.
It is. It's really cool. I came up in the old Big East, and I never thought anything could match that. And it's never going to be the same. But where this league is right now, you look at the possibility of maybe 7 teams in the NCAA tournament, and what Chris was talking about is, Xavier and Villanova are ranked, I think, 2 and 3 in the country. But just as important, maybe more, is in the RPI, we're both 2 and 3, which shows the strength of our league, the strength of our out-of-conference schedule. And then, given that, we got beat by this last-place team in the league. And so everybody can beat everybody. It's really cool. It's an amazing conference.
And we talked with you right before the year, and we talked about it's a good problem, to quote Marlo Stanfield, but it could be a problem that you can't tell these guys going into the year, listen, guys, every game, we're fighting for our tournament lives. Yeah. All of your, I think of your top 7 rotation, 5 of them have won a championship. It's DiVincenzo, pardon me, and Spellman who haven't. Yeah. Like, they're experienced guys. They knew that you guys were going to be good. So now that the regular season's over, how would you evaluate how those guys dealt with those expectations? Obviously, you had a good record in the regular season, but how do you as the coach evaluate how they handled it?
That's exactly what we do, Nick. At the end of the regular season, we look back and say, all right, given everything we went through, these guys have had a lot of success. They're young guys. They deal with a lot of attention. How did we handle it? And I really think they did a great job. We had some times during the middle of the season where we lost Phil Booth, a starter, for a while. We lost Eric Paschal for a while. We had 2 freshmen with broken hands. Now, not as an excuse, I'm saying everybody deals with that, but you just got to look at how we deal with it. I just love how they stuck together, and really the leadership of Mikal Bridges and Jalen Brunson during that time, the only guys that didn't get hurt, those guys really carried us. And I think we're at a point in the season where we can actually keep getting better because we got the freshmen back, they're healthy. We got Booth back for a couple games, so we can still keep getting better at this time of the year.
Now, Coach, regardless of how you guys do this week in Madison Square Garden in the Big East tournament, you're going to be a number 1 or number 2 seed. Let's personally talk about the Big East tournament.
I like the way you said that because everyone says no matter what we do, we're going to be a number 1 seed, but that's not true.
No,
the way you said it is true.
You could get jumps. Yeah. I mean, I'm not rooting for that, but if you guys lose,
no one else says that, and we don't talk about this in our program, but the reality is there's enough good teams that if we could beat in the Big East tournament, we will not be a 1 seed. So thank you for clarifying that.
But you've made it important to the program. 2 out of the last 3 years, you've won that Big East. Talk about how important, regardless of the seeding, how important it is to have that tournament championship before you go into the big dance.
It's important before the dance because it gives you great momentum, but it's also important for your program. We really evaluate our program on what we do in the regular season. Now, we've won the championship the last few years, and this year we didn't. And Xavier had an incredible year, and we didn't have a bad year. They just had a great year. And when you look back at the season, you look at, all right, how did you do over 18 games? And then you get into this Big East tournament, and you're playing against your brethren, right? This is your league. So how do you do in this tight, contested, intense atmosphere? And then the NCAA tournament it's a tournament, man. It's matchups. It's all kinds of things. So how we do in the regular season and this Big East tournament is really how we evaluate our program.
All right, I want to follow up on something because it seems to me, you don't have to be a detective to deduce that you have made it clear to your team, this tournament matters, guys. Yeah. Like you think you're a 1 seed, you're listening to whomever. We are not locked into a 1 seed. And I'm sure what you've also told them is, while even as a 1 seed, you're going to talk about how much, the 16's dangerous. I get that. But we know 2s get beat by 15s. And the different path to winning your regional, it is markedly more difficult as soon as you fall off that 1 line. So I'm sure you're expressing that to the team in conjunction with, and it's great to win a championship. It's great to be able to cut down some nets and say, even though we didn't win the regular season, we won the conference tournament. That's the message you're trying to get across to them this week, or you've been trying to get across to them?
No, believe it or not, Nick, we do not talk to them at all about seedings or anything like that. But we talk to them about the importance of this tournament because you're going to play back-to-back different styles, great teams. And then if you can learn to do that in this tournament, when you get to the NCAA tournament, you get 1 day in between, but the ability to prepare back-to-back is really important, and you're going to do it against the best teams in this conference.
People that aren't here in New York or haven't kind of come in for games like this, you've played in the Big East tournament, you've played in the San Diego tournament, you understand where expectations are and what. But to play a Big East tournament in the Garden is a really big deal. There's something about being in there. I've been in New York for almost 20 years. Like every time I walk in, there's something special about it. Tell me what it's going to be like when you get there, what the electricity is like, because people show up for this.
You just look at across the country. Look at all the tournaments in the top conferences. They all move around their venues. This Big East tournament's been here 30-some years. And the New York City basketball world readies for this every year. All the alumni from our schools that are in this city, that like this is what you do during this week in March. If you're an alum of one of these schools, like you spend your week going to the tournament. And the players know it. That the vibe going into the Garden. You come up that freight elevator,
yes.
you know, and you hear the roar upstairs. There's nowhere in college basketball like it. The coaches in the Big East, we'll sit around and have a friendly beverage, and we'll talk about where does the Big East championship rate with the NCAA tournament? Like, is it comparable to a Sweet 16? Is it comparable to a Final 8? Because it's so big to all of us because you're doing it at the Garden in New York City. We've come to the point where it's between Sweet 16 and Final 8, where the value of that is that important.
You talk about the ride in the freight elevator. I'm a big fan of the Garden. I'm a big fan of big venues as the stage for someone to perform. But how much better is it when the gates open, you have someone on your squad like Jalen Brunson? Like, how much does that experience change with a guy like him?
You know what? It's a lot. You know, when you go in road games and you have a guy like Jalen who's just the consummate competitor, you know, like there's no one that prepares himself better for a game. There's no one that likes the big stage, likes being in a situation where everyone's against them. So now you take that into a tournament and you take that into Madison Square Garden. As a coach, it gives you great confidence. And we have a saying that one man with courage makes a majority. And having him on your team, you know, he's just got such great courage. It really hits everyone else on the team and makes them feel confident going into games.
You said something a few weeks ago that I thought was really interesting. I was excited when I heard you say it. I knew you were going to be on sometime this week to ask you about it, which is there is this FBI probe, this whole scandal swirling over college basketball. And you said something pointed that you thought you could use as a teaching tool for your players. What do you mean by that? Like, how effectively, what does that actually mean? How can you do that?
I learned something myself because I asked them, I said, hey, are you guys following this? They said, yeah. So I said, did you see the ledger that they listed all the names? And they said, no, which showed me they don't really read the articles. They just look at
see the headline,
they look
the
at
tweets.
your clips on TV, and they don't. So we copied those ledgers and in the article, and we handed it out to them. We just showed them. We said, look at all the names on here, right? I said, we said that you have to be careful with everybody you associate with in the position you are in your life now, because you don't know how they're going to use your name. So there's some guys' names on here that they might have just used their name. They might have never met that. They might have never met that agent. You know, some of these guys that are playing that are on there, they probably interviewed them and said, like, did you have dinner with this guy? And he probably said, I never heard of that guy. But they used their name because they might have come in contact one time. So a good way for them to learn how careful they have to be with the position they are now in their lives.
And also careful as far as knowing what is and isn't okay, because if people see the big headline, $100,000, everyone knows whether that should be allowed or not, it's not allowed. But some of the other stuff, the kid that, Miles Bridges in Michigan State got caught a $76 dinner tab, something that I think most college kids why am I not allowed to say you can buy dinner?
Yeah.
So how much of your talking with them is saying, guys, even if you're not doing something you know is wrong, like you have to make sure it's not against this very dense, long rule book, that things that might not feel wrong at all.
Yeah. You know what, Nick? I don't know how it was when you were in school, but I know even when I was in play, we didn't have compliance people like we do now. We literally have every 2 weeks a compliance officer come in and talk to the team. So you have to take away practice time, have the compliance officer come in, talk with them about what's happening currently and what rules are changing. We talk to them about it all the time. And even with that, as you said, they might not realize some guy that, says he's a friend or a cousin from New York that is coming in to go to dinner with them could be connected to an agent. They don't know. So that was my reason for showing them the ledger. Like, you don't know who's using your name to go back to someone else and say, hey, I want money back because I took him out to dinner. So we even said, we got 3 weeks left in the season. All dinners we're eating together. No dinners out with anybody. We're eating every meal together. Let's just get through this season and try to figure this all out.
At the NCAA, we're going to do this one to wrap up. they're looking at making changes. You can't make any changes in college football or basketball unless you have a lot of people like yourself. People respect Jay Wright, respect what you've done, and what type of program you are. What are some of the changes that we need to look at moving forward? Because this really is about the kids. How can we help these kids more so than hurt them?
Chris, we could do a whole show on this, and in the offseason I would do it because I'm trying to concentrate just on the Big East right now. But the one simple thing is we have to make college basketball authentic. The guys that play college basketball have to be guys that want to be in college. The system is set up, and the NBA is responsible for it. The NBA will not allow these guys to come out of high school and go into the NBA or get paid significant amount of money in a G League.
A livable wage.
These guys that don't want to go to college and want to be paid should be given the opportunity by the NBA to go to the G League and make a fair and reasonable wage for their services, and they should be able to go to the NBA. That way, if they choose to go to college, they should go for 3 years. But we're making these kids go to college that don't want to go, and they know they're going to get paid the next year. But the NBA's rule of not allowing them to come out of high school is forcing college to take them, and now you got guys that don't want to be there. Mm-hmm. College basketball should be guys that want to be in college for 3 years, and then there should be an avenue for kids that are good enough to get paid right out of high school.
Let me keep you keyed in to where we are with the Le'Veon Bell and his situation in Pittsburgh. On Monday, the story was the Steelers might franchise Bell. On Tuesday, the story was the Steelers would probably franchise Bell. On Wednesday, the story is the Steelers did franchise Bell. Thursday hasn't happened yet. All this coming off a disappointing season for the Steelers that ended in a loss to the Jaguars. All right, Nick, with Bell franchised and the future of Big Ben up in the air, is the Super Bowl window closing for the Steelers, especially with those three playing the way they did last year?
Well, right. So the Steelers are in the discussion, if not at the top of the list, for most successful franchise in the history of the NFL. So as a franchise, their window will be open as long as any team's is open. But what we're talking about is this triplets, the modern-day triplets, Ben, Brown, Bell. And to me, not getting a long-term deal done with Le'Veon Bell, it is hard for me to envision L. Bell in his current form as one of, if not the best running back in the league, being a Pittsburgh Steeler after this year. So what's the window for this iteration to reach what is their actual potential, which is at least making a Super Bowl? It's the 2018 season. It is this season because to me, the situation they've placed themselves in with Le'Veon Bell is if he's unproductive, well, then he's no longer a top 5 running back, right? And if he's hyper-productive and still a top 5 running back, he's going to hit true free agency. And he's not going to have any love lost for Pittsburgh, who wouldn't give him his deal these last 2 years that he wanted. So they are going to look back on this past season, I believe, as a wasted opportunity, particularly if they are not able to do what I thought they could have and should have done this year, which is reach, if not win, the Super Bowl.
One thing with respect to Pittsburgh and how they've done things over the decades, they're going to put a Super Bowl. Every 5 years, they're going to be fighting for a Super Bowl. So their window with Tomlin, with Big Ben, when you have a quarterback that's won a couple Super Bowls, you have to always think, wow, how long is he going to be able to do that? So for me, the window is more predicated on the quarterback than it is on a running back. If we look at the NFL, we look at the playoffs, what leading rusher in the NFL has dominated the playoffs and led his team to the Super Bowl? It's just we haven't seen it. Quarterbacks have led their teams, or defenses have led their teams to the Super Bowl.
Is the last one Terrell Davis?
So you overvalue the running back, especially when it comes playoff time. And also, by the time you get to playoffs, they have had either 12 or 16 games, and there is no one on the field that's been hit more than running back. So when you start to see the productivity start to decline in the postseason, is because of the nature of the position. And if you are a dominant running team, by that time, defense can get keyed in, and they can eliminate that running attack. So for me, I believe the running back, it is back in as far as being a key focal point of the offenses. But when you're trying to pay and you're trying to put a championship team out there, Pittsburgh's got tremendous needs defensively. They need a middle linebacker. They need secondary help. There's other things that I believe are a longer-term priority that they can't give him $15 million a year. There's no running back in the NFL that unless you're playing on a losing team. If you go into a team and they got $100 million under the salary cap, $80 million, you can go there. Like, he might be able to, after the season, go to a team that is a loser and get that kind of money. He will not get that kind of money on a championship caliber team.
But, Cece, that speaks to why Pittsburgh didn't want to be in this position to franchise him again, because you're saying a winning team can't pay him $15 million against the cap. Well, this year they are. Like, it's not a long-term commitment, but it's going to be harder for them to address those needs this offseason because this year with the franchise tag, it's $14.5 million for El Bell because they tagged him last year. So they are paying a super premium when the best running backs in the league don't even get $10 million per year for Le'Veon this one season because they couldn't reach the long-term deal.
I think it's better to have a larger cap number now to be strapped with a 4 or 5 year deal with a guy that you know is going to decline halfway through that contract.
Well, let's talk about the guy. He had, they ran him 400 times last year. Do you see him doing that again this year? Was that part of the reason maybe the Steelers are hesitant to sign him for longer than a year just because they don't think they can get the same productivity out of him?
I don't think so. I mean, he's truly one of the great talents. I don't think teams count carries as far as longevity. I haven't seen it. People bring it up, but they can't give any concrete examples, all right? He is a great football player. They are not monitoring him. Well, I wonder how many carries he has now. Well, I wonder if he could do this.
So this is all about money. So, because they think he can do it.
Well, it's about the position, too. Like, how long is a guy going to be able to have 400 touches? So it has something to do with it. I don't believe that his productivity or how many reps they're giving him calculates into are they going to give him a long-term contract. I believe the money they're paying to their quarterback, the money they're paying to Antonio, and the needs they have on the defense, they dictate that we can't give him a long-term contract.
I do believe that there is only a certain number of carries or touches or whatever a guy has in his body. We don't know what that number is until after their career. But what we do know is since 2013, nobody has been used more than Le'Veon Bell. And I would imagine, tell me, Chris, I think what you've said to me in the past is they are not during the season adjusting any game plan or any usage based on his contract situation. But in the offseason, when they're evaluating, do we want a long-term investment in this guy, don't they look at?
They would not give him a long-term contract if he had 200 carries.
Okay, that's all right. So that's what you're saying.
I'm just telling you, I've watched this all along. People say it. You cannot prove that to be. When you have a player, especially a player you've drafted, he's your property. You have to try to utilize him. I mean, they've been in Super Bowl contention. You think that they would give away 10 or 15 carries to take them out of their chance of winning another Super Bowl?
No. That's what I'm saying. That's where we agree.
I mean, you cannot get to being one of the most successful franchises ever over the course of many, many decades by making decisions that way.
We're, I think, talking past each other a little bit. We agree on that. What I'm saying is when you are looking not about how you use him now because, he's on the franchise tag.
So what do they say about Antonio Brown? He's got 100 catches multiple years in a row.
I think that there is not. What we do know is, when you say you can't prove it, what we do know is there is a long history of running backs the year after being highly used, be it Larry Johnson, Jamal Anderson, Terrell Davis. We can go down the list. It's basically been since Earl Campbell was the last one who dealt with that.
Besides Earl Campbell, none of those running backs are as good as El Bell.
Okay.
All right. Look at their career. Look at their numbers. So you're not comparing apples to oranges. El Bell is a prime time. I mean, he is a big time. If he's able to put another 4 to 6 years together, he will go down as one of the great backs all time.
So why doesn't Pittsburgh want to try to keep him around?
The pie is only so big, Jenna.
Okay.
All right? And you already have a disproportionate amount of the money going to the offensive side. All right? Antonio Brown's making $18 million a year. Ben is being paid at an elite level. You can't have all that money of their salary cap in your backfield.
That's the point. That's the point you've made in the past. When we were talking before the show, you mentioned it, that the Steelers made their decision on whether or not they're going to give El Bell this huge deal he wanted, not this offseason, but when they decided to give Antonio Brown that contract. When you make the decision, despite Antonio's Facebook Live, despite some of the things that are not ideal for the team setting, we're going to look past all that and have you set the market at wide receiver. Mm-hmm. We're going to pay you $18 million a year. We are going to do things that in Pittsburgh we don't typically do. Remember when was not Mike Williams, the fast receiver they had that I can't remember.
Mike Wallace.
Mike Wallace, thank you. When Mike Wallace, he wanted a big deal. They said, okay, that's great, we'll trade you. Like with Antonio Brown, once they made that decision, in your eyes, that's when they knew we can't have the highest paid wide receiver and the highest paid running back.
Right.
Hey everybody, Nick Wright here, and thank you so much for listening to the First Things First podcast. But I wanted to tell you about another podcast at Fox Sports that we are so excited about, and that is Alexi Lalas's State of the Union podcast. That's right, U.S. soccer legend Alexi Lalas will be partnering up with Fox soccer guru and researcher extraordinaire David Moss to review the top storylines in soccer across the globe. Each week, Alexi will give his State of the Union on American soccer as it rebuilds for the future. Subscribe and listen for free on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts right now. Now back to the show.
We're now joined by former NFL head coach Eric Mangini. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Good to see you, Coach.
Good to see you.
How are
Felt
you?
almost guilty of calling you Eric there for a second. I felt like you were getting in trouble. We are a mere 184 days away from the start of the 2018 NFL season.
Is that correct?
That is 100% correct. Check me.
Do you know the season starts on a Thursday night?
Check.
You got it. You got it. She got it.
I don't want to. Everything makes me nervous now.
Don't worry.
Hypothetically speaking,
night or
if it started,
Sunday?
We got a numbers
know.
guy.
You got it. She nailed it. She
okay,
double-checked
those
that.
184 days, give or take, apparently 4 days, barely enough time to get our mock drafts together. One quarterback bouncing around everyone's mock draft, former Oklahoma star Baker Mayfield. You see what I did there? It's called a transition. Despite leading one of the most efficient offenses in college football history, people are still split about the demeanor on the field for him. According to Kimberly Jones of the NFL Network, one head coach described Baker Mayfield as, quote, over-the-top cocky. Coach, would Baker Mayfield's personality bother you as a head coach?
I would have to do a lot of research before bringing him in. There's a thing that we used to use, the Mae West rule, where if you have to tell people you're a lady, then you're not. And if you have to go around and talk about how good you are and all those things, now you start to worry, is it really competence or is it truly masking some sort of insecurity? And in terms of people talking about, well, you know, a guy will mature. And my comment in the draft room was always, okay, tell me the 23-year-old that you give more money to, more time to, more fame to, that suddenly gets more mature. And you're trying to go back and look at his past and the things that he's done and see which way he's trending, because it's going to get old hearing, hey, I'm sorry I did this, hey, I'm sorry I did that. And in terms of his willingness to be coached, his willingness to get better, there's a lot of great players that are confident, that are coachable, that want to consistently improve. And what's the balance? What's the balance with him is what I'd have to find out.
Is there a guy in the NFL right now that has similar, I'd rather call it confidence than cockiness, that has been very successful?
Oh, I think you're talking about the quarterback position?
Yes.
I think there's a lot of guys.
Like Cam Newton?
I think but not just Cam. I think Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady is that type of true confidence.
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron Rodgers is a great example. I think most of these guys that are high level, especially at that position, but high level achievers in pro sports, have enormous confidence.
So what's the difference?
Well, the difference is grabbing his crotch and getting tackled by the cops and the planting the flag. Like, that's the difference. I mean, the difference is that, and again, I am not a guy that worries about this type of thing that much. I'm a talent guy, and CC has talked a lot about his teammates like him, his teammates follow him, he's a leader. Those things matter more to me. But we do hear this in the draft process all the time. Everything gets lumped into character issues, whether it's really about character or not.
I love the way you put the air quotes on character like it doesn't mean anything.
No. That's not...
We talk about character.
Okay, well,
those things are important because the human being that comes into the locker room affects the other human beings.
Agreed, but the reason I put air quotes on it is I remember when Jameis Winston's coming out of college, and we lumped sexual assault allegations into the same bucket as character issues, that is planting the flag or not shaking a guy's hand. Like, that's...
Well, we don't have anything else to call it. So anytime we have it, and that's why I had a problem with the question about Josh Rosen yesterday. if we're going to say character issues, well, Josh Rosen, Jameis Winston, Baker Mayfield, they're all three totally different.
That's why I put the quotes on it. Because
they're off the field
Off the
issues.
field.
Okay,
concerns, non-football concerns is what I would call it. My only concern with Baker, as far as if he is claiming or if people are like he is going to change, is the things that happened post the embarrassing arrest. Because he knew he was a Heisman Trophy frontrunner. He knew he was a potential first-round NFL draft pick, and he had his college screw-up. He had his, oh, God, listen, I ran from the cops and got arrested. I got tackled by the cops. If after that he still acts out the way he did, I believe that's who he's going to be as a pro. Now, I don't necessarily have a problem with him being that guy as a pro, but I don't think you're going to have some late career or I guess early pro career revelation when the moment where you got arrested embarrassingly didn't change those actions.
You know, I have a respect for the coach who says that he's too cocky for him, because coaches, they have a temperament. And every player can't play for every coach. I'm sure that Bill Belichick, the marriage that he formed with Tom Brady, it's evolved over years. But at the beginning, was Tom Brady the type of quarterback that Bill Belichick wanted? No. I mean, it takes time to develop. I believe a lot of Baker Mayfield has to do with his story. And you see Tom Brady. Tom Brady's confident. But that confidence is into the team, within the team confined. It is not overzealous. It is not misappropriated. So when you see the kind of enthusiasm and cockiness are two totally different things. And we can't miss that he is a quarterback. He's not a wide receiver. If he was a wide receiver, we wouldn't care. If he was a running back, we would not care. He wouldn't have character issues. He would just be one other confident guy in a room full of confident guys. But the thing is, we're getting ready to give this guy the power to be the face of the franchise, and his character becomes more important because he's scrutinized more. People are going to say things to him worse than what they said in the Big 12 once he gets into the league. So how does he handle those things? And for me, the attitude is developed from being a walk-on out of high school and having that chip on his shoulder. That, to me, is what he's trying to live up to. At some point, you have to realize, I'm already a star. How do I get better on and off the field? And those are the questions that Baker's going to have to answer going forward.
Confidence, to me, is knowing that you have shortcomings and believing you can overcome them. And arrogance, to me, is thinking that you don't have shortcomings. And you want someone who is confident, who believes in their ability, who believes that they can do the things that need to be done in an organization in order to be great. But if you get a player that's arrogant and doesn't feel like he needs to continually grow and develop, you look at a guy like Jerry Rice, one of the greatest players of all time. He was consistently worried about his job. He was consistently worried about whether or not someone was going to be able to come in and remove him from the roster, and that drove him all the time. Tom Brady is consistently driven to be better regardless of how much he's accomplished. Yeah, Baker Mayfield's had a really great college career, okay, but things change when you get in the NFL, and you better come in with the confidence, but not arrogance. Otherwise, you're going to get a beat down.
I think it becomes hard to be coached when you're arrogant. And when you're I just tell kids this all the time. Every day as a talented person, you have to submit your talent to the coaching staff or the authority that's over you. And if you don't do that when you're arrogant, it becomes hard to get better every single day. It would be impossible for Tom Brady with Bill Belichick to splice up the tape when they have a game and to put Tom Brady on the beginning of that tape if Tom was not humble enough and submitting himself to the organization and the process. It really helps in coaching the rest of the players. But when you can't approach your star like that because he's fragile or because he doesn't think that he needs it, the trickle-down effect, I believe, on the team is drastic because you can't go hard after guys. If you can't go hard after the quarterback, it becomes harder to go after the rest of the guys on the team.
But you don't have that concern with Baker because you like that he's a guy that's not coachable, correct?
These are the things you have to adjust. We have not seen them yet.
Okay. And typically with problems, they're a little bit like icebergs. You only see the tip of them, and there's usually a lot of other ones that never get out publicly. And I'm not saying this is the case with this kid, but the process is going through and figuring out, okay, is this just what we've heard is all that he has, or is there a whole nother layer? And when you're at bigger and bigger schools, those things tend to get
hidden.
be hidden.
There's going to be
pretty
plenty of times
well.
he's the captain of a team, the guys aren't going to shake his hand.
Right.
That's like normal. I wouldn't be expecting the guy to shake my hand. So his expectation, what we expect from him on and off the field, they go up
And
higher.
that's it. And when the off the field affects the on the field is when you really have the big problems. Coach, thank you so much. I'm Jenna Wolf, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.